and welcome to Rulebreaker. Today we're going to take a look at how to play as the Mentak Coalition in Twilight Imperium 4th edition. The Mentak are kind of like the pirates of space. They like to pillage and kill and do all that sort of stuff, and they get loads of trade goods which they then use as bounty. They're a really fun race to play as, and let's take a look at what you get when you start the game. Okay, so the Mentak start with two starting technologies. They start with Sarween Tools, which is a yellow tech, and Plasma Scoring, which is a red tech. It's a pretty decent start, actually. Sarween Tools reads, when one or more of your units use production, reduce the combined cost of the produced units by 1. So essentially it's a discount of 1 on the total units you spend when you're doing production. It's pretty good. It's a nice basic technology that pretty much every race should really be striving to get. It's just a discount across the board, and a really nice one to have at the start of the game. The other one is Plasma Scoring. When one or more of your units use bombardment or space cannon, one of those units may roll 1 additional die. So just an extra die when you're doing PDS firing or dreadnought firing down on the planet during bombardment, that sort of thing. Nothing too fancy, but pretty good. It's nice to have 2 techs at the start, and it's yeah, they're 2 decent ones. It's a good start for the Mentak. The Mentak starting units are a carrier for carrying troops around, 2 cruisers, which are the fast ships that move pretty far, 3 fighters, which are the little guys that usually are used for absorbing damage, 4 infantry, which are your ground forces, the ones that take planets. You got a space dock, which lets you build more stuff, and a PDS unit, which is basically a planetary defense, which, like we mentioned, with the space cannon ability on Plasma Scoring. Okay, this is the Mentak starting system with the planet Mal Primus. It's a 4-1 planet. That means 4 resources and 1 influence. With a space dock on it there, that means you can produce up to 6 units when you do production. That's 4 for the planet and 2 for the space dock. It's a pretty decent start planet. I think there's not really anything to complain about there. The fact that it's only 1 planet is fine. The 4 resources is very welcome. You've only got 1 carrier, so you're probably going to want another one pretty quickly in order to expand out and conquer planets nearby. Having the PDS is a nice bonus. You shouldn't really need to be defending your home system too early, but it's nice to have it available, and you can leave it there if you want. No harm done. So a pretty decent home system for these guys. Alright, let's take a look at the front of the race sheet here. The Mentak have pretty standard units. They don't have any surprises here. The usual setup for all of that, all the same stats and everything. They have their special abilities on this side, which we're going to look at now. The first one is Ambush, and it reads, at the start of a space combat, you may roll 1 die for each of up to 2 of your cruisers or destroyers in the system. For each result equal to or greater than that ship's combat value, produce 1 hit. Your opponent may assign it to one of his ships. So bear in mind, you do start the game with 2 cruisers. This ability applies to them and to destroyers if you build some of those. That's these little guys here. They're pretty cool. Being able to move 2 with both of those is pretty key to the Mentak's ability. Essentially, this ambush is just a free sort of shot at the start of combat. Thematically, it's like these pirate guys are just, as it says here, ambushing their opponent. So this happens at the very start of space combat. And just to have a look at this turn order thing here, you'll notice that space combat is actually phase 3 of a tactical action, and in movement, space cannon offense can happen there. So it's possible that PDS will be able to fire before ambush happens. Alright, let's take a look at the other ability, Pillage. Pillage reads, after one of your neighbors gains trade goods or resolves a transaction, if he has 3 or more trade goods, you may take one of his trade goods or commodities. Wow, that's pretty cool. So this is pretty key to how these guys work. You may notice that they only have 2 commodities, so they're only going to be able to have 2 here for trading. A big reason for that is because trade goods is kind of their thing. Being able to get lots of them easily is very overpowered for the Mentak. What you might find happen in this game is savvy players will try to have fewer than 3 trade goods. They'll spend them quite a lot. You don't want that to happen. You want lots of trading to happen. That's going to be very tricky to control. It's going to be key to success as these guys. So this pillage ability, being a neighbor with somebody is very important. Let's just have a look at how that works. Okay, we're just going to quickly go over neighbors. Let's say that the Mentak player is the yellow ships down here, and this is just a small section of the universe as an example. If you're adjacent to somebody like you are with the red player here, 1 hex to the other, that means you're neighbors. That means that the pillage ability is possible. It means you can trade with them, all that sort of thing. The purple player up here is not adjacent to any hex with the yellow ships, so that means that they are not neighbors. However, the blue player, who is on a B wormhole, and the Mentak player on a B wormhole, these are treated as if they are adjacent, so these would also be neighbors, just like the red player. Okay, so with that in mind, just remember that you need to be a neighbor with somebody for pillage to be taking effect. Alright. Let's take a look at the Mentak's flagship, which is called Fourth Moon. So the flagship is this big piece here. It's called Fourth Moon. It has a cost of 8. It hits twice on a 7. It has a move of 1 and a capacity of 3, meaning you can carry 3 smaller units with them. The ship has sustained damage, meaning that you can take a hit and it's turned upside down and it's still alive, but another hit will kill it. And the ability is other players' ships in this system cannot use sustained damage. So what I just described about being able to take a hit without dying, if this flagship is in the system, your opponents can't use that at all. So you'll be able to destroy ships like a Dreadnought in 1 shot when the Fourth Moon is there. Pretty straightforward. Right, the Mentak also has 2 racial technologies. Both of them are yellow techs. The first one is salvage operations and the second one is mirror computing. Let's take a look at these. Salvage operations has a prereq of 2 yellows, bearing in mind that you do start with Sarween tools, so that's one of the 2 already built. And it reads, after you win or lose a space combat, gain 1 trade good. If you won the combat, you may also produce 1 ship in that system of any type that was destroyed during the combat. Let's just take a quick look at that on the board. Alright, so salvage operations. Let's say you activate a system as the yellow player here, the Mentaks. You fly in, you get involved in some combat. Let's say the purple player destroys you, kills you, absolutely annihilates you. Then you get a trade good anyway. There you go, like a little bit of compensation. That's for you, no matter what, even if you lost, alright? However, let's say that you fly in and you actually win the combat, you destroy these 2. You also get to build a ship that of the same type that you destroyed. So let's say you chose to build the cruiser. That would mean that you would have to pay for the cruiser. Cruiser costs 2 resources to build, so if you spend the 2 resources, you would get another cruiser and it would go straight into the system. Now let's say that you actually wanted this big badass Warsun. The cruiser you already had, because that's a basic unit, you have that at the start of the game. If you wanted the Warsun, you'd have to have already done the technology to have Warsun available to you. So if you've already got the Warsun technology built, then that's fine. You can get yourself a Warsun. You'd have to pay the 12 resources for it, but you would get it straight into that system immediately. Another example of this is with the flagship. So let's say that you fly in and you destroy your opponent's flagship. You can produce a flagship, but it won't be the opponent's flagship. It'll be Fourth Moon, like the one on your sheet. Alright, you can do that. That is possible. and likewise that would have to be paid for, and it would go into the system just like any other ship. Yeah, that's salvage operations. Bear in mind that you do have to stick to your fleet limit when you build a new ship. That's one of the rules you got to adhere to, just like always. The second Mentak technology is a 3 yellow prereq called mirror computing, and it reads: when you spend trade goods, like these guys here, each trade good is worth 2 resources or influence instead of 1. So basically, the earlier you get this, the better. You're going to be hopefully getting trade goods from pillaging other players, which is one of your special abilities that we just spoke about. That's this one here. Like whenever people do trade and they've got more than 3 trade goods, you get one. With mirror computing, that's going to be worth 2 per good. That's pretty amazing. It also combos up super well with salvage operations. If you want to be building yourself something amazing, you could just fly a really cheap ship in to a fight, even lose the fight, get a trade good, and it will be worth 2. So that's a really cool combo to get going with trade goods, and that's what pirates want. They want lots of bounty to make better stuff. And yeah, that's the very obvious and very basic strategy with the Mentak's 2 technologies that they have. The Mentak also have their own promissory note, just like everybody else. This is something that you can give to other players to do deals with them. So you're going to give this to somebody in exchange for something, maybe trade goods, for example, which is something that you really want. This is called Promise of Protection, and the action is what the player would be able to do who you give it to. And it reads: place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, the Mentak player cannot use his pillage faction ability against you. If you activate a system that contains one or more of the Mentak player units, return this card to the Mentak's player. So yeah, you give this to somebody and you don't get to steal trade goods from them whenever they've got 3 or more during a transaction. I like this promissory note actually. It's cool. You can give it to somebody and it encourages them to want to trade with other players, meaning that you're more likely to have somebody at the table trading, meaning that you could probably sneak a few of these trade goods in as a result of that. I would try and give this away if I were you. It's a good one. It's one of the better ones, one of the more beneficial to have on the table promissory notes in the game. It's quite fun. Alright, so that's the Mentak. They're pretty fun to play as. They're very cheeky. You know, getting involved in little fights, little skirmishes just to get some trade goods is pretty fun. Comboing up their 2 technologies is pretty fun. You're going to be playing a bit of a tricky game regarding people trying to avoid the pillage ability. At worst, you're going to be preventing people from stockpiling trade goods, which is pretty cool, but you're going to want people to trade so you can get them. You're going to want a lot of transactions happening at the table. The way I would go about that is probably not do it too much early and let players get comfortable trading, and then start becoming neighbours with them and doing some sneaky fights, and then getting yourself these as early as possible and capitalising on that. Yeah, Mentak are pretty fun. The fact that they start with 2 different tech is good. Starwing tools is awesome. Plasma scoring is pretty decent. Their starting fleet is not too bad. They've got a bunch of infantry, a couple of cruisers to go with. Their ambush ability is nice. Don't be afraid to get stuck in fighting. Just maybe don't do it too quickly, and you should be able to get somewhere with your game. So I hope you have a lot of fun as the Mentak Coalition. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Send some comments my way and let me know if there's anything you want in the future with this sort of stuff. And we hope to see you back here for another one real soon. Thank you very much.